Alright guys, what's going on? It's Phil here, or the Chillest Phil, and back at it again with another video, and in this one we're actually going to be talking about Borderlands 3's newest DLC, known as Guns, Love, and Tentacles, The Wedding of Wainwright, Jacobs, and Sir Hammerlock. And this DLC is DLC 2 of Borderlands 3's season, and so far they have confirmed that there will be 4 story DLCs, so we're about halfway through the DLC season, and they've been providing lots of events and all kinds of just special things for us to enjoy, and the story DLCs are kind of the glue that hold it together. It's one of the biggest things that games can do is have story DLCs, and Borderlands is no different. I think Borderlands actually hits it on the head better than any other game does in terms of its DLC content, and I think Borderlands 3 is actually hitting it perfectly. I don't think any other game is having the right kind of events or anything like that, and I don't think they're providing the same replayability that Borderlands is. Got Destiny providing the looter shooter type genre, and I think a lot of their stuff is just tedious, kind of boring. It's only made for like hardcore players, but Borderlands is appealing to all of its audiences, both casual and hardcore, and anywhere in between. So I think they're with the fully fledged campaigns, there's usually like all the fleshed out areas. I mean, we've seen like the small ones like Heck from the Bloody Harvest event. We've seen a couple of mini areas added, little like the takedowns, add some areas, as well as the I guess you can consider the Proving Grounds to be adding area that we didn't really see before in the main game. But I definitely think Borderlands with its story campaigns just does everything better than most other games. Now, with the good vibe of Guns, Love, and Tentacles, which is very Lovecraftian, if you don't know H.P. Lovecraft, a lot of his work, absolutely hate the person. He's an awful person, but I'm not getting into that right now. But I love his work. The stories that he created with his poetry were absolutely wonderful, and I'm glad to see it realized in a more comedic fashion than most people would go through. A lot of people would be dissecting each and every part of it, but I don't that's not my spot. So I definitely think Borderlands 3 solidified it as itself as a risk taker, and I think those risks tend to pay off a lot more than they fall flat. I think the Borderlands 3 story as a whole kind of fell through in a lot of places, but I think the DLCs are more than making it. So far, I think it could be the best Borderlands game that we've seen. So far, I think Borderlands 2 is top tier in pretty much all aspects, but might just bust through that glass ceiling with Borderlands 3. You never know. So I'd like to divide this review into a few steps. Number one is going to be the story. So of course there will be spoilers there. I'll try to include timestamps in the description for each part of this so you know where spoilers are and where spoilers are not. So step 2 is going to be gameplay. We're going to be talking about the new enemies, the new weapons, and the mission flow. And then step 3 is going to be the atmosphere, the NPCs, the character usage, and then we'll have a little summary at the end. So stick around. Now, we're going to talk about the story there. This section will have spoilers. So, your Vault Hunter is heading to the icy planet of Xylorgaborg for the wedding of Wainwright, Jacobs, and Sir Hammerlock, hence the name of the DLC. Now, Gage, if you don't know, the Necromancer from Borderlands 2, she was the first DLC character, and she is the wedding planner, and she invites you to help with the wedding preparations. Concept, pretty simple. What isn't so simple is just how weird the planet gets. Now, one of the first things you'll notice is the giant tentacle creature who's just dead. He's absolutely just slumped over the whole area. It's actually really cool. One of the main things about it is that it tends to build onto the environment. And of course, with one of the spoilers being here, the final area in the DLC is actually inside of the creature where its heart is. And that heart is the very thing that keeps Eleanor and Vincent, the main villains, alive. Now, the story covers Wainwright and Hammerlock questioning their bond, but they do realize in the end how much they love each other, how much they're made for each other, which is cool. And one thing that I will not be talking about is LGBT influence on this DLC. That is not my thing to talk about. I'm here to talk about video games, not social commentary. So we'll be discussing this any other way that we would any other game. I'm not here to talk about overarching themes or anything like that in terms of commentary. So ultimately throughout the DLC they're questioning their bond. Part of this includes Wainwright feeling like Hammerlock wants to go out and adventure and have somebody with him who can see these adventures out. And then Hammerlock is questioning whether he's too outward, whether he's too adventurous for Wainwright. So a lot of this does tend to build the story up as kind of like a will they, won't they type thing, but not enough that you're like, through the whole thing, you're like, okay, so I don't really care anymore because they rammed it down my throat, right? So the villains are a pair that use the creature who is known as the Githian to survive, and they're gonna stay together forever. Their bond is unquestionable. There's no breaks in their relationship at all. Along with that, there are echoes that flesh out their story, and you can see their descent. They started off as adventurers who were trying to find a way to stay alive. I believe Vincent had some sort of like life-threatening sickness, and that's one of the things they were trying to stave off, was that he was going to die. And rather than just let him die and then she lives on her life as a widow, they were trying to find a way to cure it or to stay alive, and they stumbled upon the heart of the Githian, the lore behind it, and used that to do what they'd been doing, staying alive. Now, the way that they work is that there's this ring that they wear, and it is cursed, and like each of them wears a different one, and it's cursed basically, so that whoever wears it becomes the vessel of either Eleanor or Vincent, depending on which ring it is. So near the beginning of the story, Wainwright goes to explore the town with you and investigate a little bit, and you kill Vincent, whose ring picks Wainwright as its host and vessel, and so Vincent starts taking over Wainwright. So your goal throughout the campaign is to ultimately get the ring off of him, but also to defeat Eleanor and Wainwright, because they're trying to basically drive off Wainwright and Hammerlock's marriage. Now, I think the Cursed Town is one of the best things. The town is known as Curse Haven. I think it's one of the best things about the story, because everything just lends to this vibe of like curses. One of the coolest parts is that everything in there is cursed. Every single person has like this black stuff coming out of their eyes. It's like one of those stories where like towns can't get to sleep because of some kind of curse, or some kind of creature is wreaking havoc on them, whether it's like a wolf, you know, the boy who cried wolf or whatever, or if it's some kind of like monster, which in this case the Githian is kind of like cursing them with its weird seepy magic type junk. Everybody's cursed. So I think the story holds well, and I do honestly think the story here is better than the Moxie DLC. Now, with the Moxie DLC, I felt like a lot of characters were outlandish needlessly. I know I didn't do a review of that, and I would do one if it was still kind of like a hot topic, but I think a lot of people already have their opinions made up, and I don't think there's a need for that review to exist on my channel. But I definitely think the story holds together better than Moxie's. I think it has beautiful storytelling, both through the cutscenes and through the gameplay. I think the character usage is on point. Overall, we got an amazing story. I do think Hammerlock should have been more involved in helping to save his husband. I'm glad Wainwright didn't fight back against the spell's effects, as many forms of like TV and movies show, where people are always like, oh, I know you're in there, and then they're like, oh, I'm in control of the vessel, but only for a minute. I just want to tell you I love you. You can do it, brah. And then they turn back into the villain or whatever. It's great. Like, this is, I think, the first story I've ever seen where the vessel has complete control, or not the vessel, the host has complete control over their vessel, which I think is just awesome. One of the first things I've seen do that, and I love it. So next we're going to be on part 2, which is the gameplay. We're going to start with the guns. So my favorite gun in this so far is the Seventh Sense, which is a pistol that you get through the side quest Cold Case with Burton Briggs, who, I love his story. Burton Briggs is probably the best part of this DLC. Love him to death, or Burton. The Seventh Sense is a 6-shooter, which I believe might only come in the cryo element, but it's similar to that one pistol from the campaign that you use to see those special targets. It's like that, but you can see ghosts, basically. It gives you the Sixth Sense, similar to the Bruce Willis movie. But it does amazing damage. I love it. There's a new artifact, I believe it's called the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge. It gives you this weird damage stack thing where like every consecutive hit gives you 1% more damage up until 15%, and then it gives you a 20% boost, so you end up with 35% better gun damage. I personally don't like it because it doesn't match with my build, but I can see where it goes absolutely nuts. Now, along with that, all the guns have like tentacles and like these weird effects where like either their abilities change. Like, for example, the Old Ridian is a new SMG. It drops from a lot of different sources. I don't think there's any set loot point for it. It only drops from the DLC, of course, as all the DLC weapons do. But the main thing about it that I like is that when you reload, it changes elements. That's like its cool effect. I just love the design of all the different guns. They're really cool. The Seventh Sense actually has a couple tentacles at the end, and it just makes it look awesome. A lot of them feature like color shifts and stuff like that throughout them. Some of them actually do have fur on them, because one of the main parts of the story with some of the newer bandit models is that they have like fur on them from living on an ice planet. So it's kind of cool to see that. A lot of the chests have that effect as well. So it's kind of a neat little balance between almost like a Viking feel and then the mystical alien curse type feel. You know, everything's mythic or whatever. Now, I don't think more is necessarily better, though. There are more legendaries than Moxxi's DLC. I believe there are 27 legendaries as compared to Moxxi's DLC, I think, had 18. Somewhere around there, the numbers might be a bit off, but it's proportional. But there is less variety somehow in that. I think there's a lot of guns with kind of repeat effects from legendaries that we've already seen. I think Moxxi's DLC did better with the legendaries, like the Craps, the Ion Cannon, the Ion Laser. I think a lot of those were cooler in a lot of aspects, especially like the Lucky 7. That was awesome. That was a good concept. The Old Ridian is nice because it switches the elements, but that's probably the only notable one I can think of. And the quest reward you get at the end of the DLC, which is a gun that, it's an explosive shotgun. I haven't seen every single gun from this, I will admit, but from the legendaries that I got to drop, I don't think they're on par with Moxxi's DLC. Say that. Now, onto the boss battles. Actually, before that, the enemies. I think all of them are fresh, in a lot of cases. Like, the bandits are bandits. I mean, bandits are always bandits. But along with that, I think they definitely did get a welcome coat of paint. But along with that, we also have creatures such as the Wolvengars, the Bonded, and the Critchids, which I think are all amazing additions. I think the Critchids are annoying, but they're just the right kind of annoying. Like, kind of similar to crabworms from Borderlands 1, except they don't go into the ground and they don't give you the crap load of experience that you always got from those. But I definitely do think they are a fun addition. I just really don't want to see them in any other DLC. They're a necessary evil. The Wolvengars are amazing. They play not anywhere close to Skags, which upon seeing one you might think they're going to play like Skags, but they're a lot more aggressive. They aren't nearly as gimmicky, and I definitely think they're actually like a suitable threat as compared to Skags when they were just kind of like bags of meat. Along with that, there are the Bonded, who are really, really interesting. The lore and the concept of them tie all together with the DLC. They aren't just there to be there. They're the pawns of Eleanor and Vincent. They teleport in, they teleport out. A lot of them have really cool abilities where they can like teleport in, beat the crap out of you, teleport out, you can't even hit them. A lot of your tracking is going to be like important here, whether that's sound, whether that's different kinds of symbols around or whatever. You just want to try to keep track of them. They're really neat. I just love the concept behind the enemies in this DLC. Now, along with that, I think the boss battles are honestly the best that the Borderlands series has ever seen. I'm not kidding at all when I say that the boss battles are just amazing. They definitely beat out any boss battles that I've seen in the Borderlands series, and I really like this new direction. The Empowered Scholar is probably my new favorite boss fight. I'd have to like weigh the pros and cons of it more seriously, but like just off the noggin, I'd have to say Empowered Scholar is amazing. So the way that the boss battle plays out is that basically it will pick one of the Bonded around the area as sort of a vessel, sort of like a pawn, and then upon defeating that Bonded, the Scholar will attempt to recover, and then after they attempt to recover, they will heal up a bit, and then after that, there's a second stage where after you defeat its Bonded, it will teleport away, and you have to parkour across these flying rocks, and it really lends to the challenge because there aren't a lot of boss battles that in Borderlands that actually lend into the mechanics like that. A lot of them are just run and shoot. or dive and shoot or whatever. This lends into the vaulting mechanic, like, you know, like where you try to jump over objects, where you try to grab onto something so you don't fall to your death. I will admit that I fell many times doing this boss fight. But then you have to take out these crystals, similar to what we saw in the Troy boss fight, to stop the Scholar from healing all the way. And then they'll teleport back in, pick another bonded. Then they teleport back out, and they get, after you take out this one, where you have to, again, parkour, take out the crystals, after that one, they get another bar where they've also got corrosive damage. So now you've got 2 red health bars, a single shield health bar, and then a corrosive bar for armor. It's insane, and the last stage of it actually feels like a challenge, where it almost feels like a Final Fantasy boss fight. I don't know how many of you have actually played Final Fantasy before, but a lot of those boss fights play out in stages, and this one is more similar to Final Fantasy than Borderlands, and it really like the direction that they're heading in. Along with that, there's also an empowered Goron boss fight with Deathtrap as your ally, who, if you don't know, Deathtrap is the companion of Gage, the Necromancer. She built him, or her, it, they, Deathtrap. So basically, the boss fight consists of you and Deathtrap trying to defeat this Goron. There's a lot of bonded teleporting in and out, and that one is less good, but I still love it. Along with that, the final boss, Eleanor and the Heart, are amazing. I love the atmosphere. You're inside of basically this Githian's chest cavity, where you're trying to defeat the Heart, which is literally a giant beating heart that Eleanor and Vincent subsist off of, while Hammerlock and Wainwright are dangled above you. Wainwright is almost completely taken over by Vincent at this point and telling you that he's going to defeat you along with Eleanor and they'll be together forever, but it's in Wainwright's voice, which really, Wainwright has the best voice of any NPC. I love him. He's beautiful as an NPC. Next to Katagawa Jr., he's probably my favorite NPC. Now, the mission flow just makes perfect sense to me. I think the mission flow is probably very high tier. Everything just serves a great purpose. Along with that, we also have the side missions, which are awesome, and they lead to just awesome things. There is a tie into the main story with one of the side quests called The Great Escape Part 2. There's also the story of Burton Briggs, who is a amnesic detective, and it reminds me of something out of the Fallout series by Bethesda, where it has all kinds of flashbacks and like mystical things, and it really brings me into full narrative mode, you know, where you get really invested in a story, and it honestly almost made me cry. Along with that, the perfect usage of Claptrap. That's it. Claptrap used just the right amount in this DLC. Overall, the guns are a bit lacking, but the new enemies make for amazing fodder on your quest to be the rootinest, shootinest cowboy in space. Finally, we're going to judge the atmosphere, the character usage, and then we will summarize. So, ultimately, I will say that Wainwright has the best voice of any NPC. I love him. Wainwright is very high tier. Hammerlock, again, I think should have helped the Vault Hunter more. I think that would have been a lot better. There's only one quest where he really goes along with you when you're hunting the Wendigo, who don't like that boss fight. But Hammerlock, I feel like, should have helped you. He should have tried to help his husband, future husband, fiance at the time, in more ways than just sitting by him saying, "Are you feeling all right? Are you okay? Are you good, fam?" That was basically his entire contribution outside of one single quest where he helps you. Along with that, I think Gage had growing pains, but the DLC really was not meant to be about her. I think there could have been a side quest or something for her where I could have chosen to learn more. I will say along with that, I did 100% this DLC, actually technically 103 because they mess up the numbers sometimes. Every red chest, every location, every echo, everything. And Gage really did not have enough substance in this to really warrant all of the lines about her. She kept calling for margs, which is like a trying to be cool way of saying margaritas, I guess. And she kind of just had like an edgy sort of teen feel to her. It's been 7 years since the events of Borderlands 2, and it doesn't really feel like she's grown up a lot and learned a lot. I think the only thing is that she's becoming an alcoholic. That was pretty much all I got from her side of the story here. Now we move on to another amazing addition, which is Ista, who is a hunter, pretty well-renowned hunter. Hammerlock knows of him, who says one of my new favorite words, slash, which is basically a fight, or more like a friendly battle almost, where you attempt to show your power. Very beautiful guy. He leads into one of the cooler boss fights in this, with a set of side quests actually known as We Slash, where you go and get an item for him to make a brew out of. He drinks it, and then it gives him an ability. So throughout it, you get 3 different items for him. You get each item before each fight. So you get an item, you fight. You get an item, you fight. You get an item, and you fight. And throughout it, he gets more powerful. He gets another bar of shield, another bar of armor, and the last fight actually was, again, a challenge, similar to the Empowered Scholar, where he becomes known as Ista the Invincible, and if you're at max level 57 on Mayhem 4, he is level 60, which is awesome. I love seeing, like, the progression from level 50 all the way to now 60, where we're seeing enemies, and it's awesome. It's really great progression, especially being following the game since before release, and trying to see as much of it as you can. I really think it's beautiful. I love it. Along with that, the Cold Planet plays in, but it doesn't feature too much cryo, which is good. I absolutely hate cryo. The parts where it does feature seem to be more based around like when you're trying to do side quests and stuff like that, and like a lot of the bandit enemies are using cryo guns. There aren't a lot of cryo enemies in terms of non-ranged combatants. In terms of melee creatures like the Wolvengars and the Critchids. They tend to stay away from you actually a little bit more, especially the Critchids. The Wolvengars, a lot of them feature weird different abilities, which are nice. I just love the atmosphere of the enemies and the planet. It's really a beautiful location. Along with that, the Lovecraft references are everywhere. The red texts of most of your weapons, the effects of some of your things, the giant tentacle monster I've mentioned many times, the Githian. I'm just glad they didn't talk about Lovecraft the guy, because he's a piece of trash and I hate him. Alright, we're all set. With that, I'd like to summarize by saying that this DLC is Borderlands storytelling at its finest. I definitely think they have managed to create a perfect little slice for Hammerlock and Wainwright to be expanded upon from the main story. I think Gage was welcome, but I think she was a little too welcoming in terms of her story being explored a little bit more past where she's been since Borderlands 2. At this point, all we really know is that she is planning their wedding. Outside of that, we know her only companion is the Death Trap, which the last time we did see her was during the Holodome DLC of Borderlands the pre-sequel. You might not remember it because they didn't advertise it or put it anywhere. Probably didn't sell very well, and I don't think a lot of people actually played it. But during that, it's mentioned that her and Axton are off-planet hunting vaults, and that's about it. We haven't seen Axton, we don't know where he is. Along with the Gunzerker, we don't know where he is either. Or Krieg, outside of some cut lines from the game. Along with that, Ista, amazing character. Wainwright has the best voice, I love him. Along with that, I think the main villain actually are very strong. I like their story, I like their motivations, I like their concept, and their execution. I love their fights, I love the boss fights throughout this DLC. The guns were lacking, but the new enemies kind of made up for it a little bit in terms of variety and appeal, but the guns we did get are well designed. They just didn't provide enough real variety. I don't think it lends a lot to builds, especially in terms of outside of the artifact. Not a lot is really going to change, I think, the meta of the game. I think a lot of people are still trying to refarm for their new gear with good anointments. One welcome change Borderlands Gearbox did put in recently that you might not know about is that if you are at the level cap, you will not be getting items below the level cap anymore, which is great because a lot of people were getting lower level drops. Like when they were at the cap of 53 when it was there, people were getting items between 50 and 53, even lower, and I think it's definitely a welcome change for people that are grinding out and trying to get their perfect builds. So yeah, Guns, Love, and Tentacles is the DLC 2 for Borderlands 3, and I absolutely love it. If you guys also love it, make sure you drop a like on the video, subscribe, turn on those notifications. I'll try to upload a little bit more than every 100 days from now on. And leave me a comment down below. Make sure you let me know how you feel about the DLC. I always see comments. I love reading through them. Love creating little discussions with people, asking questions. So make sure you check that out, and I will catch you guys in the next one.